So I'll tell you, the things they want to talk about, the things I want to talk about are kind of crazy. It's stupid stuff in Jeff's head for 200, Alex. What are we talking about, Jeff?
Dang. Well, hey guys, I hope you had your lunch. This is Jeff, and I'm going to tell you what we're talking about. Now, we just left our last episode out there as something about the Milwaukee music industry. So I wanted to create this as a part 2, and I'm going to put my chats on here too. If you guys are out there and you want to say something, I'm jumping in. I'm happy to see you. Jump out here with me. I've had many people talk to me about, my career in the industry and all that stuff, but I feel like if I have enough of a voice, I want to jump out there and say more about it. And well, this is a voice, I guess. But looking at it, we were talking about a question, and that question for me was, why is there not a Hard Rock Cafe in Milwaukee? And I said this in about 2003. I can give you an exact moment in 2003 when I said this to a few people, that I was fighting for the idea that we'd have it. And one of my thoughts was, we need to get one in there. We need to, but part of our problem was we had no music row. We had no place to go. If somebody came into town and asked you, hey, where do you come in this town to see good music? Besides just national acts where you wanted to see people developing music that wasn't something you already heard on the radio, or at least going to see a good artist, that because they weren't going to come and see LA artists that are on national records and stuff like that. They were going to come see a good band, and you wanted to promote your local friends. Problem is you'd maybe get one or two venues and then it was gone. There was nothing. There's not just an area you could go, or and you ask any musician to this day in Milwaukee, hey, where's a great place? They'll give you 3 basic places, and maybe 4. And a musician who's been around will tell you about all the places he's loved to play, or she's loved to play, or they love to play. But it's funny to me, like, there's things in your industry, in your place, that you would marker as a tone for your neighborhood, right? If you got the Walmart, you were bigger than just a small town, right? If you got a McDonald's, you felt bigger as a small town, right? Well, so there's these markers in your industry, right? So if you're a basketball team and you get Giannis, you're bigger in the industry right off the bat, right? So you get a famous player or you get this go-to place that defines your neighborhood as being important, or your industry as being important. And if you went to LA, if you go to Nashville, you go to New York, you go to Miami, major marketing towns is where you're going to see a Hard Rock Cafe. And I get that. Doesn't just necessarily mean music, right? But major marketing towns that had a market. You look for things. Or let's say a group of bands create in the music industry, let's say a group of bands create a scene, right? So there was San Francisco and LA who had the music scene for a long time. There's New York, and Broadway was a big deal, and still, I mean, forever will be a big deal. But, there's also the New York rappers, the West Coast rappers. In the early or late 80s, early 90s, the alternative groups started popping out between Athens, Georgia, and then Seattle. So the 80s was like Athens, Georgia popped up, right? And then you had Seattle. What is Athens, Georgia at that time, right? Before those groups come up, not everybody was talking about Athens, Georgia. Those artists start talking, now musicians are going, Athens, Georgia. You think that was happening in the 80s? Heck no. But Athens, Georgia became a place where people were known, artists were coming from. Seattle, right? And so most of those places you're going to find a Hard Rock. To me, a Hard Rock started defining where music was prominent enough for Hard Rock to want to put a restaurant. Hollywood, Florida has a Hard Rock Cafe. Why? Because there's money. There's plenty of money. How many artists do you know came from Hollywood, California? Not a one. I know a number of really quality artists and people develop an industry that are from Milwaukee, Wisconsin. I mean, heck, even Chicago had the blues scene, right? But I'm going to tell you, you even look at Chicago now, and most of its cover artists, tribute artists, and things like that. You're not getting Styx. You're not getting, Chicago, the band. You're not getting all these artists from that were say 70s, 80s that were coming out of the Chicago area too. And Chicago's got a hard rock cafe, and they still have an industry. They still have guys like Jim Peterick still feeding the industry down there, albeit their time uh, publicly when it came to hits on the radio was years ago. Their legacy still lives on there. Now, nationally, who do you think looks at Milwaukee and who do you think they think of? Not seeing it. We think Eric Benet, but I mean, he got a lot of rapport. And when you think Milwaukee, you're probably thinking Danny Goki because of American Idol. Proud to have him on that list. Is that it? Because they made it nationally? Right? I guess that's how Athens, Georgia. But is that the only list? I mean, other than that, there's plenty of musicians that came from Wisconsin that came, that we even in Wisconsin look at as like, well, we can build our industry by telling you that a lot of their creations started when they lived in Wisconsin. One of them, Steve Miller, but he was gone at 5 years old. He grew up in Arizona. But we look at Steve Miller as a Wisconsin board type of guy, and we take his artistry from a guy who left when he was, 5 years old. His family moved him away. But we proudly from Wisconsin will hug him and hold him. And I'm okay with that. But at the same time, when you developed an industry in a certain area, they got known for not being from the area or when they weren't from the area. So what's happening is we're not developing enough artists in our area to create enough stink for people to want to make us a place to be. That's disappointing. Now everybody I know wants to run down to Nashville to make it happen. And that's not a bad thing. I mean, you had big dreams, you ran to LA. You had big dreams, you ran to Nashville. You had big dreams, you ran to a music market. But those guys that had big dreams that made it from where they were from pointed out where they were from and moved back to where they were from. Why were no artists proud to say they were from Milwaukee once they left it? Why are no artists proud to say they're from Wisconsin when they leave it? Now we've got quite an industry of Wisconsinites that are in Nashville. We've got a bunch of them that go down to Nashville, have moved down to Nashville, and we're developing players, which again, I'm sorry, I'm going to take a little credit for that. That's a bold statement. It's a bold statement, but I'm going to take a little credit for that. I know specifically people who went down there to do what they're doing, and they may not know this, but there are instances that happen in the industry and things that were said that said this stuff should be happening. If you're going to go. If you want to make light of your career, put a light on your career, go where there's light. The hard part for me is I wanted to be here making that light happen in Wisconsin. I wanted to be part of helping make that light bigger in Wisconsin, not just in Nashville. And the hard part is you need money to do that, right? So this is an implorement. This statement right now is an implorement to everyone out here in our industry in Wisconsin. This is an implorement to say Wisconsin is valuable, invested in Wisconsin too. But when I say that, it comes down to business people that shouldn't just throw their money at the same wall. The problem is they're throwing their money at a wall. And when you do that, it falls off the wall. You're not taking the time for people to read, and you're not taking the time for people to use it to the next level. That's been the disappointment. I know that's supposed to be controversial. That's And I'd love to hear your opinions on it, whoever's watching, because I know I just made a statement that might tick some people off, but I think it's the truth. Uh, I'm just putting this in there because I don't have a producer hanging downstairs right now with me, so I'm doing the studio work myself. I'm just going to give you a tidbit of what I'm talking about. Right. So this was kind of the thought. This is the theme that I'm going to lay out there for you guys. The Milwaukee scene, Wisconsin music in general. We can include quite big scenes that have popped up in different places, right? We can also talk about the Fox Valley scene that's gotten much bigger because of bands that are playing really well, because of agents who are working venues. And let's face it, because of the industry of sports, Green Bay Packers have given a scene for that area to have an outlet for that music. Okay, so success in sports also does that same thing. So now Milwaukee gets more of a scene because there's success and events are created around success and more bands are hired because of success. So the beauty is those two national corners get a little bit more. Now, what people may not know in this whole dang industry outside of Wisconsin is Madison has their own. Madison has their own, and it's untapped by most people who aren't from Madison. And for those of you that are from Madison but have gone to other places, you have to make your world back in there. And it's not easy. And there's a few businessmen that have kind of opened up the valley or the Monona area to fitting more bands from outside of Madison. But Madison itself hated everything around it when it came to music industry. They wanted to develop their own, and they wanted, I believe there was a original music push out of Madison, but it literally had a bubble, and Madison was enough money in their own area to sufficiently create their own entertainment industry in Madison. But again, it never left Madison. Not much. Most of you don't know Clyde Stubblefield. Clyde Stubblefield, the drummer for James Brown, from Madison, grew up there, ended his career there. Right, lived there till he passed away. God rest his soul, amazing man, and a heck of an industry leader. And we made a large memorial about him for the Whammies, Wisconsin area music industry, and I think that's huge. That's important to me. That's something to talk about. We need to talk about that. How guys aren't inspired in Wisconsin by Clyde Stubblefield is impossible. But at the same time, most of the guys you hear that are from all different other states. Why is that? Because we barely knew that Clyde Stubblefield was from here. If you weren't paying attention, you didn't know. That's media. That's number one to me is media. And it needs to be addressed. I'm going to set this up for you guys. I'm going to do this. Now, there's been a long running debate on, Milwaukee dominating any kind of music scene in Wisconsin or trying to look like they were the only thing in Wisconsin. And then, so then the efforts are leading out to finding more talent all over the state. But the farther you got out, the less money was spent on it, so they didn't bother, right? You've got 600,000 people in Milwaukee, you're spending more money on it. That makes sense. I mean, it's just the nature of the beast when it comes to business itself. But when it comes to developing talent, business can be bigger. And so what we found now, what makes Wisconsin quite the industry, and it's bleeding out into the Midwest, I think, besides Chicago, because Chicago's always kind of remained a national perspective. And if you weren't national, well, then you were just another one of the booking agent people, right? But because it's a hub, you could still get talent out of Chicago quite a bit. It was a place that you could get hired from. Because, hey, I'm from Chicago, big market, come on along, you must be great. When I found that the percentages don't match up, it's still the same. I mean, when you listen to a group, you could get that group out of Milwaukee, you could get that group out of Minneapolis, you could get that group closer to your town even if you really looked. And so, but because it's a big spot that you can hire somebody, it works, right? But Media. I digress. I go back to Wisconsin. Scene. Media is one of the big things. We have the internet now, so media now takes on a whole new meaning. But even our local internet media could get stronger in promoting each other, talking about each other, creating interest and info for fans. We have fans that get loyal, but 90% of what starts a band is family and friends. We all know this. Family and friends locally start you. But those family and friends staying with you for more than 10 years is an amazing thing if you don't develop more people coming. And unless you're one of, I would say one in every 20 people who have a whole family that's going to come to every show you play for that year, it's not going to be sustainable. Life happens to a lot of people. So if you're going to sustain a market that needs to have more people showing up at many band shows, then we need to start educating fans. I've said this in my whole career. We do nothing to educate fans. It's all individual artists that have to educate fans on who they are. And that's true. We'll take on that onus. Every individual artist will take on that onus to say, this is who I am. Come see me. Right? We should. You should want your product to be out that far. But at the same time, if there's no one actually saying you're good, then you're still just tooting your own horn until you perform. So now it comes down to the venues where you perform, right? We've had a lot of step up, a lot of turnover. So what we run into, I want to get into the venues side of things with this. To me, the venues, man, like there are so many really good ones. There are now venues that only had national acts for most of our lives, probably having to have local acts to fill time. Otherwise, it's just an empty building, right? So now they're going to local acts and creating an upper echelon of local acts that can play in these theaters that have made memories with radio hit bands most of their existence, right? So you've got, the conglomerate that of the Pabst Theater is the first one I think that comes to mind for most of us. The Pabst Theater, Riverside, and Turner Hall. That conglomerate of guys. I haven't met you guys but once, and I don't know all of your names, so please forgive me. But I believe you, believe you me, you've had an effect on my career and what in my thinking. Um, they are working hard to develop something as a venue for local artists, which is wonderful. Um, and I realize I should have enough respect that if I'm going in there, my product is going to nail it. And my product look as strong as a national product. And so I think that thinking started from get-go. And when I said that, somebody said to me that the national product, the A band theory that you're hearing, the idea of A band instead of looking like a D band means your production level needs to be up there. But what I do believe is this: what we've seen in the industry, in Milwaukee scene, in the overall scene, is sound quality companies that are coming out there now can make a dime setting up for 3-4 bands in their conglomerate and help 3-4 bands at a group. So now you're seeing more sound companies able to pop up because there's a market for paying for sound. The lighting guys had it the worst, right? Lighting guys had it the worst. But I say this because venues like media, we have no media uh, that really has a focus. There is no there's no focus on helping the entertainment industry. The entertainment industry, the media looks at, we are the entertainment industry. When I say media, when I grew up, it was radio and television. And television lacklusterly found a way to just make the morning show, or, there's no drive time. There's no evening competing with uh there's no evening competing with late night TV or primetime TV, none of that. No way. And the only way is if you got a spot for a minute and a half on a morning show and they cut you off. What we started seeing in the 2000s was a few directors saying we need to feed our local market and allowing, a Christmas special, which was amazing. Like that would get local featured artists because it started with high schools, really, which was great. You showed your local high school choir singing a Christmas song. That was awesome. You see a local event where they're putting on a concert, so they want to promote it. So you go have them come into the studio and sing a song. And then they realized they could actually do this for paid musicians. And so there was a few you could, kind of get into a conglomerate of who would do that for you. Now we have Real Milwaukee. We actually have a talk show with regular local personalities that talk about local things every morning. That's big. You're not going to get that all over the state yet because there's not necessarily enough money in it or an interest. And that's the thing is if we're trying to develop this industry, we need businesses to focus on putting money towards that, if that's an important thing. And we as artists also, artists as an industry, not just artists ourselves, but the people who are making money in the industry, agents, I'm calling you out, managers that want their venue to be amazing, I'm calling you out. You have to think bigger than just your door to make your door make more money. You either have to think bigger in either quality or that you're going to experience loss to experience success. And I've seen many places they've got these big dreams. We're gonna do this. We're gonna nail it, and then in a year and a half they're gone. The only thing that still remains are you booking agents. Now, a number of the era of people have moved on. Yeah, a number of the people have moved on that were from an era of the 90s to 2000s. Those a few of those agents have gotten older. A few of those agents are still here. So now there's new blood in there in these agencies. But what I feel like the agencies do will always feel this way to an artist. Let's face it. I'm going to back off. We've been 20 minutes in. I've got to give you guys at least a couple seconds to take a break from this voice. So we're in our first 20, going into our second 20. You're watching me with, what are we talking about, Jeff?
So I'll tell you, the things they want to talk about, the things I want to talk about are kind of crazy. It's stupid stuff in Jeff's head for 200, Alex. What are we talking about, Jeff?
Dang. I'll point that out. Like and subscribe DAHL Media right here on YouTube. And, of course, if you're watching me on anything else, you can like and subscribe my page and the DAHL Media page that's right there, too. You can follow us on those, and we'll be getting more social media add-ons so you can find us anywhere out there. We're working on that daily. I'm Geoff Landon. I'm your host for this show, and it is, what are we talking about, Jeff? That's right. And we're back on now what would be our second 20-minute session. And we were talking about the idea of what I look at it from the Milwaukee scene. It's just something where I was led from that scene to where I'm at now. I could give you a history on all of it. But if we're going to talk about now, it's still been the same for me for a while. And it's not that places aren't. I think we're exceptionally getting better. We're seeing a lot more people get involved. And I had some talks with some people that are now running northern festivals back when I was first in the industry as a band. Back was brand new. We were still. I'll face it. I feel we were strong in focus, talent, and ability. I think we were weak in overall production in some cases, and so we took a lesser dollar in the beginning. But that's because we were just trying to get into the business anyway, right? And what I had a few incidents that started happening that you start thinking about what other bands are going through to get this stuff. And I did not come from the idea where I had a bunch of money to start with at all. I didn't have this sponsor or that sponsor. I didn't have, my mom and dad were not going to be over my shoulder just handing me success either. So, I'm just giving you all different examples of where money can come from, right? So we had to find that way ourselves. And so in the beginning, you did things as cheap as you could, right? For some of us, we did things so cheap, but tried to make it look, we call it baffling them with BS. If you can't, if you can't nail it down, you baffle them with BS. You find a way. You do something, and then what you try to do is minimize the mistakes, minimize the problems. And that's how you become professional, because you're able to either make your quality better by minimizing the problems. And so I feel like we did that over time. But early in my career, I was having even these small fairs that wanted to create a state fair, a Summerfest kind of image to upgrade theirs because they see other county fairs that can put national acts in their main stage, but they're barely finding a local act. I went to a couple of fairs in the beginning that really didn't have that down, and they were actually asking me what to do. And it was, I don't take that for granted. I was like, well, then I'm going to tell you as best quality I can give you, or at least in your budget to get started. But what we've created now between a few of us, and they know who they are, um, they've had some success. And it's led to bands not from their area being able to be pulled up there, and them hiring bands they never thought they'd pay for or have. And one of the pieces of advice that I gave them, uh, in general, and I just want to give you this list here, everybody. Uh, the idea that we're talking about music scene, and now we're going to talk about fairs. And so I'm a little all over the place to an extent, but if you listen to this as a whole, you'll get it. This is kind of for the county fairs, the village fairs, the city fairs, little towns, everything. The biggest thing is, to me, the industry has been what we saw on TV yesterday. The ability to recreate will always be behind by about 5 years. But what scares me is that we're going to try and recreate things like Sam Smith at the Grammys the next time around. We're not far from that, which is going to be no band, a couple of people up there singing to a track, and a bunch of people dancing. Okay. But you just eliminated half your musician industry if that's all we're going to hire. And so, I can't say we're a dying breed, and I'm never going to look at it like that. We are not the electric car. Um, but we could go that way. But so I focus on fairs. There are fairs that have really kind of done it up again. Back in the day, you saw 4 or 5 county fairs on your TV could offer a national act, and there'll be entertainment after. Now, most of these fairs, you can find local acts after your national act. And if it's done right, it's done well. It's done efficient. The fairs that are going to do it anyway and figure out a way to make it happen, even though their numbers aren't that great, here's the deal. Here's the issue. You actually pay for advertising. You actually push this stuff, and you've seen how to do it now with the internet. Right? And so now the ability is you have an outlet that you didn't have before. You can sell tickets to your event line, all that stuff. So now we can use internet to our advantage. So it's helped things grow in that sense. But what's still not happening is no one is educating their fans through marketing. Uh, if you want fans that are to come see you, it's usually that conglomerate that sees you on stage or knows you. And then there's a very few that get some money from somebody and then trigger their way in, right? But as an industry, this is the reason why we don't have Hard Rock Cafe or anything like that, or any kind of tourism industry when it comes to entertainment, because not a one of them have worked together. Everybody's just done their thing and taken their money. And in the end, when they take the money, there's no development of what we actually have here. So it just cultivates the same field. And we've now, what you run into is you remember in farming, You make corn for 2 years, and on the 3rd year, you grow something else, or you're going to kill everything in the soil. That's the scariest thing right there for our industry, is the idea that if we just keep throwing the same pissant money, we're always going to be the same pissant situation. We have to agree that when you're building this industry, that you're going to help it because it's bigger than you and because it will help you. Like, if you want an entertainment industry to shine a light on what your business is doing, what your fair is doing, if you want that entertainment industry to be successful for you, you have to be successful to want it to be successful for you. So you should also look into the idea of businesses. You should look into the idea of helping this industry, because that industry can pay you back too, because it'll get your name out there. Sponsorship is no joke. It can actually work if you spend a little money on it, but you have to be diligent on why. If you don't need it, you don't need it. You don't get involved, and that's fine. But if you're going to talk about getting involved, don't tell me you're going to make millions of dollars if you're not trying to help more than just yourself. It won't happen. The rap industry in the national sense is one of the proofs in the pudding. If you're going to have 3 guys in your entourage, all those guys are now successful in your entourage because you brought them along and you gave a crap enough to bring them along. So all of them got successful too inherently. If you don't believe that, then and you're still deciding to do this, you're going to last about 2 years and you're gone. I've seen it. We've watched venues try to do this. Speaking of venues, I'm going to go back to that for a second. Um, what we ran into in the 2000s, 2010s even, um, what we ran into in venue was a lot of bars and restaurants coming up and wanting bands. And they would find the same bands that are at the restaurant down the street because they had a successful night over there. They'd want to put them in right next door in their place. And it turned into, the downtown LA in the early 80s, when bands were trying to be everything. And so that lasted, those days of era had plenty to fuel it. And there was plenty of bands to market that idea, where you could go up against somebody. You take 3 bands and you'd keep those bands. They'd have their bands that might even be similar style or something, but they'd have their bands to go against that, to try and draw the people over to their house. Minneapolis had it. I mean, that's kind of the premise of Purple Rain and Graffiti Bridge, if you didn't pay attention to that, right? That there was a scene and there was enough that if you played this venue, you were up against that band over at that venue. That's not how we treat this at all. What we try to do is hire the same damn bands to go up against each other in different places, because the venue thinks that, oh, that crowd that just saw them down there is going to come to my place because they're going to want to be at my place. Okay, if that's true, great. But when your venue isn't even feeding the atmosphere the other places, you're not going to win if you don't figure that out. If you're going to have bands in your place, do not make me move tables. That doesn't look good for the industry in general. If I have to move tables to get my stuff in, you're not a venue. You are a restaurant first. You are a bar first. One thing that Tim changed in his culture, and I say Tim Dunn, I applaud you. A lot of people applaud you for what you've been doing. There's still some things, obviously, if you had space and time and lots of money, you'd probably change yourself, I'm sure. But what you've done to your venue to at least cater at the time of the band being there is you change the room before the band gets there. So if you're in a situation, I think that's a classic example right there of what you can do to win. If you are a venue that doesn't necessarily have the space normally, at least when the band is about to show up, you're ready for them. That's your first thinking is, if you're going to do this, you're going to do this to set it up right. So if you don't have the facilities that are theater quality or big enough to not have to move stuff around to get to, or your back door does not have the ability to bring stuff in from it so these artists don't have to walk amongst the front door to get in, you're not a venue. A venue will open up the space for the band, will create a space for the band. Now, uniquely, what Tim's had to do, he has to cover up dartboards that they need that space for dart leagues to make money at other times. I totally get those things. But if I'm moving tables while I'm setting up, you haven't thought of me. That's big. Come on, you guys. That's the first thing an artist sees. When you first walk in, you're going, what am I doing? Why am I playing this? If you're going to have a band, clear the space, right? Now, there are some small situations. It's a Nashville way of thinking where it's small, it's small, it's small. It is what it is. But when you go into Nashville, you can go into those small places and still get damn good atmosphere. So that's your next thing. Is what kind of atmosphere are you creating at the time of the music? If you can't do it all day because you're catering to other things, I'm okay with that. But if you actually take the time to get people to look at the band when they're playing, don't tell me I'm wasting your money if all they're doing is sitting at your bar, not bothering to look. At the same time, I've also heard the other argument, which many venues are right, take a break so they'll buy something. So there is that. There has to be this give and take, right? And that leads to the next detail. The next detail that venues need to feed and educate fans. This is not just educating fans because of who's in the market and who they should go see. This is also educating fans on etiquette, on character, on being a fan. If you don't give them an avenue, they will just be a person excited to see something. Or nobody else in the room that expected a band will want to be there. And if they are, they're just going to kill the experience of the band if they weren't there for the band in the first place or didn't know the venue was bringing a band in. So now there's all types of things that lead to creating that atmosphere for that moment. If you're not willing to do that, you're not a venue. I pause each time so you'll take me seriously because it's the truth. If you're not ready to make that, don't do it because you won't be around longer than 2 years with entertainment. And then you'll blame entertainment for losing money, which makes no sense whatsoever. Little bold. Got to drink something else. Pardon me. These aren't stupid things necessarily all the time. They're just personal things, maybe. So I have to digress from that. But I believe that. If you're trying to make music to make money, well, then dang well feed it to make money. Don't feed it as a partial thought. I don't. I spend my time thinking about how I'm going to entertain somebody properly. And that includes stuff that doesn't include me. I don't just think about what I can do for me. I think about what somebody wants to hear. If I'm making it what somebody wants to hear, if it's not exactly like what they said they want to hear, are they still listening to it because it's still good? Can I do something like that? If I can't, do this. So if I see my limits, can I do something to explore how my limits can still open the floodgates? That's a great way of thinking in any business. And I think if nobody's taught you that in a college course, and if you haven't learned that and as you're doing that in business, you're missing the point of making money and trying to create something strong. You can make money in an instant. You can see that something sells and you can make the money right away. But if you want to stick around for a long time, there's got to be ways to around the limits, right? We get that. That's like 101 in marketing. I'm stupid stuff. And Jeff said, here we go. The stuff that should have been stupid questions and stupid answers, that should be a stupid answer. But guess what? There's still people that have no idea that that's out there, that are in the industry that can affect the business. And when businesses fail after a couple of years after trying that formula that somebody else already had, they don't realize that it's the personal experience. It's the experience that either you can sway people to be happy about the event that's about to happen, about the moment that happens in your place. Venues, I beg you. Now, businessmen, this is where you're important too. Business women, business people, um, where venues are also considered fairs too. So just so you know that. Um, why is that important? I mean, come on, man. Not just for me. It's for all the other artists that are doing this too. That if you're going to develop them as an artist and somebody who's important, you're going to help them get there. You want to feel like the quality of music you're bringing in is not just because I picked them from a freaking magazine or through an internet page that I saw. That I saw a video on YouTube that says, well, they drew like crazy. They played pretty well on this particular song. And you think that portfolios in this business are weak in Wisconsin? They are. A lot of them are. And if an agent's not willing to back somebody, then it doesn't matter. And I got to tell you, 75% of what agencies do have nothing to do with actually promoting bands. I said it. There, I said it out loud. Controversy. Dun, dun, dun. I'm going to take a moment. You guys are watching. What are we talking about, Geoff, on DAHL Media?
So I'll tell you, the things they want to talk about, the things I want to talk about are kind of crazy. It's stupid stuff in Jeff's head for 200, Alex. What are we talking about, Geoff?
Dang. Yeah. Oh, I hope you had a little some refreshment. I hope your lunch hour went very well. We're working on our third 20-minute segment, and I've got ESPN on here, kind of enjoying that a little bit. I'm watching my phone just to see if anybody's mad at me yet, but I don't know if I have enough people to worry about anybody being mad at me yet. But yeah, the hard truth is, and agents, I hope you're hearing this. I believe there is a loyalty to people who do well for you. I do also believe if I'm making you money, then let's keep going. And I get that not every venue wants me or wants something in specific, but there's of the money has changed nowhere. You understand? The money has changed nowhere in the sense that in the past 30 years in the Wisconsin industry, agents take their money, and I don't know if they realize that 90% to almost 100% of any band that's playing in Wisconsin that's either a cover band or a local group, each member of that band takes home less than what the agent takes home. And the work put in is 90% the artist, not the agent. What you're paying for is who they know and what they have for the list of venues they've got or the places you can play, which is quite true. I mean, one hand washes the other. I completely get that. Do I feel like every member of my band should be paid less for someone who's doing less work? Well, I have to scrutinize that. I have to determine whether it's worth it for me to let you take more money than my guy playing for what the work that was done. And what I've run into a lot is a phone call, not to me, to the person I'm going to play for. I get a few texts, I get a few, maybe an email, maybe one phone call, real quick one. Hey, are you available? A text. Hey, are you available on this date? Hey, can you give me some dates? I've even had venues who have guys that, hey, can you give me some dates? So I have to go through, make sure that my exact date, because I should be begging to play for your place. It feels like that sometimes. Like You're telling me I appreciate that you want me to play at your place, and I think that's amazing. But I also no different than you have to make a schedule to have bartenders, waiters, waitresses, the whole 9 yards. I have to make a schedule to make sure my guys play, my group can play. And in asking me for dates, mass dates, I'm going to go through and give you mass dates from this month to that month. I'll give them to you. But that gets exponentially harder when you're individualizing dates. And then you want me to play a place. Now, there's a whole thought to this. So I don't want you to think I'm so shallow as to think I wouldn't play a place if that's what you're going to ask me. I think it comes, let me digress on that. The thought is this. You do realize that I'm also taking care of other people in that group, right? And you do realize that, we may not be able to play that day because we might be booked. On the other hand, if I feel like you're asking me in this venue because I have all these dates available and I should just want to play for you, you might be assuming a lot more than you think. I think if you could, if venues could, and if agents could think about what's really good for your event, if venues could think about what's going on that week. The first one is as simple as, and some venues do. Most venues should, if they're smart, right? They sit back and they go, I want country nights on Friday nights. I want rock nights on Saturday nights. Well, they're okay. That's half the battle right there. Then I know Friday nights is what you want from me. You've given me something to say, okay, I can book Friday nights here. I don't have to worry about giving you my whole list of Saturdays. So when you have random thought process of how you want to do this Friday, Saturday, whatever, Thursday, now I need a little bit more out of you. Do you think I'm going to be good for you the third week of April or the first week? Do you put thought in that far? Could you? Could you? Because it's going to make a more successful process if you think, you know what, this would be perfect. I think we could make this happen and let's see if he's available. But what you think is I've got 20 bands calling me. Let's see. Yeah, I've got this venue who you could play for. Give me some dates. Well, if you've got 3 other artists asking for that same date and you choose the other artist, how do I feel? How should I feel? Now, if you're also picking genres, I'm up against 4 other genres, at least. So if you're picking 4 genres and all those bands and you want me to give you a mass amount of dates and you're willing to think of me in your dates, cool. But then you start, I've been in the business 20 some years now, and you start figuring out when they start taking a band they think is better than you. And then they want to ask you the next year, hey, got any dates? I'll take them. Well, what do you need? Well, how about the whole summer? Just give me every date you got available, then I'll pick one. Well, it doesn't. So you pick one, and then I have to go back and talk to the guys about that date or the group about that date to make sure we're all on the same page. I should just be available for you at any time of those dates. It's that simple. There's nothing thought of that the artist might have to go through that problem either. So then you've got 6 bands that are willing to give you those dates and go like this, then take them. But you're asking someone who's 20 years in the business to compete with a 2-year band for dates? If you want new music and new bands, then focus on them. Don't ask me for a massive dates. Ask me for a specific date then. Give me something that says you fit here. A venue like Country USA or Porterfield, they do have the benefit of having 1 weekend a year. These are the dates. Pick one. You've got 365. It's a lot more. I get it. Then, it goes per month. It goes what event is going on that might fit that artist would help immensely make this business that much stronger. If you actually have somebody in mind, because I can't imagine that the Pabst is just calling people to see if they can play there just so they'll fill the dates. I mean, they're picking and choosing who they want there, and they feel it's going to fit because the market around their bar is going to fit too. So what happens? Two venues have basically the same country band, literally 3 blocks apart. Well, then you better create hype. You better create something that's going to make your night as successful as theirs, if not better. But you can't do it to say, well, they got a country band. Now what am I going to do? Well, okay, if you're going to do that, then start. You're going to probably need to push the idea that your band is strong. But you wouldn't even have to do that if your venue already had atmosphere, right? If your venue became a destination for bands, then you wouldn't have to worry about that. It's not just the onus of the band. I already going, I feel like I'm the strongest product you're ever going to get because I know I can do quality for you. I'm not worried about whether I'm even in competition with that band over there. I know when I stand on that stage, I'm going to give you as much atmosphere as I can give you. But if you're not giving me any atmosphere, it doesn't matter. Then I'm just part of the group of many that come in here and try to play. So it's a horse apiece. We wash each other's hands. I know I'm going in there with my product as strong as it can be. Why aren't you? That should be the first thing you think of. What we're talking about the music scene in Wisconsin, everybody. I'm a local artist in Wisconsin. I'd like to consider myself somewhat of a regional. I'll play anywhere, for God's sake. I'm sure most of us would say that. But it does. These are simple things that could be thought of that doesn't put you out, and it doesn't add to as much money as you think. Businessmen, we implore you to stay strong with an industry that you feel can be strong. If you're interested in helping out music industry, know that there are great artists in the Wisconsin music industry. And there can be a way to cultivate that. So you have the ability to pick it like grapes for wine. That's definitely one of the things is, if you look at an industry that's based on whether you can grow it there or not, we're starting to see places that can grow grapes that couldn't do that before for the wine industry. We're seeing wineries all over the place. They're figuring out that they can do stuff, but it's the way they do it that makes it successful. And they found a way to harbor their limitations and be able to grow despite limitations. When me as an artist hears things from venues, from other bands that don't think like that, it's very disappointing. It really is. But what happens, and I'm one of those that's been, I'm not necessarily a victim because I won't allow myself to be a victim, but I will say, you give me, there's a million people who tell you give me $1 million and I could be Garth Brooks, right? You give me $1 million and I can be Geoff Landon. And I can be a really good artist. I don't have to be Garth Brooks. You give Rebel Grace $1 million, they will be the best Rebel Grace you've ever seen. Think about that. I believe in a group that believes in what they're doing. And I'm using groups that I know their name and whatnot, but this is an industry that has walked the same path for a long time, and there's just as much abuse as there is success, and it will probably grow to be tougher than we can ever imagine. But at the same time, I think if you follow the simplest thing, there could be a lot more success for everybody in that industry. And it comes down to believing that it can happen, and it comes down to taking a chance. So, even you new artists, to have an industry to come to, for anybody who's trying to get into this, stop trying to beat your neighbor. There's a fuel in a fire that says you're better than the next person in your mind, and that's a good fire. Keep that fire in here, because what you're going to find out in a hurry, exist. You're going to find out in a hurry that you're going to be humbled very fast. That, yes, you may be strong, but you have no history compared to that artist did. You can have one. And as long as we keep developing the industry we're in, we can always keep developing that for the new artist. We can always keep that going for all of us. But the more we do this, there will come a day where there won't be any. And I think you can pretty much look at life that way. Stupid stuff in Geoff's head. There you go. Look at your living like you look at life. Hey guys, you've been watching DAHL Media, and you've been watching What Are We Talking About, Geoff? Coming to the end of my third 20-minute segment of this series and this episode, and I'm so happy you stayed to listen. Just supporting. I got Miss Sammy Ray right there. So she's been nominated for Female Vocalist of the Year. Those of you that know me, we've worked together over the years many, many, many times, and I respect her completely as a singer, as an artist, and a person too. She's just a great person in general, and I think most people in the industry can feel that way. You might see me do that some more. I'm going to be wearing probably more T-shirts of other bands that have been around, be around, all that stuff. And if you've got one, you guys can message me. I'd love to show off your material right here as well. So, hey, if we get a chance to talk about something and you want to jump on the show with me here, just jump on and find that out. Message me, direct message me, whatever works. You're watching DAHL Media. Like and subscribe down below out there on YouTube. And, of course, you can like and subscribe DAHL Media and, of course, me, Geoff Landon, at Geoff Landon Music. All right, we'll see you guys soon, talking about whatever's on my mind again next time.
Dang. That's kind of it.